All right, I think we're about ready to get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. My name is Jeremy Martel. I work with the Cape Breton Partnership, and I'll be providing some background technical support to this webinar today. Before we get started, I hand it over to our host. I just wanted to give a quick update on how today's session works. We're using the Zoom platform in the webinar feature of the Zoom platform for today's session. If you have any questions, there's a Q&A bubble either at the bottom or top of your screen that will show you where you can type questions throughout the presentation. We will see those, and at the end of the presentation, we'll try to answer all of them as long as time allows. You can also use the chat function that's there in case you have any issues or experiencing any technical glitches, and we'll be right with you to try and fix that as soon as possible. We'll also have a poll at the end of the session you can let us know how we did, and in the event that you want to share anything that might help these webinars become better as we go. So with that, I am going to pass it off to Haley. That is the cue phrase for Haley Langlois to join us as your host today. Hello, Haley.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you everybody who is joining us today. First, we would like to respectfully ask all participants to reflect on their own decolonization journey as we consider what it means to be located on unceded territory of Mi'kmaq. Unceded meaning Mi'kmaq have legal and rightful ownership of lands and sovereignty as a nation. It is not enough to simply acknowledge the systematic injustices that Mi'kmaq continue to endure, but we have to have a full understanding of who has and continues to benefit from those injustices. The CBUSU would also like to thank our partners of this webinar, so the Cape Breton Partnership, Cape Breton University Alumni, and CBU as a whole. And if you didn't know, today's webinar is actually a part of the Adulting 101 week at CBU. And although virtual, we wanted to provide students with the opportunity to broaden their skills and learn about networking, as some of us may be near graduation. Our presenter today is Robin Lee, and she's the Connector Program Coordinator with the Cape Breton Partnership. So she's going to talk to you guys all about their program, and there will be an opportunity for your questions to be answered at the end, as Jeremy had mentioned. And I will pass it off to Robin Lee for the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Haley. Thank you everyone for attending. As a part of the Cape Breton Partnership's talent retention team, I'm thrilled to be here. We really love working with the CBU Students Union and with CBU alumni and friends because they are key parts of the student experience, and that includes helping students find their place in a broader community of peers and professionals. So the goal for today is straightforward. I really want to simplify what professional networking is, why we do it, and give some advice that will help you develop as networkers over the coming months and years. And I just want to give a shout out and thanks to Jeremy, who's running my slideshow for me, and also my good colleague Leslie McLean, who made the slideshow when I came to her in a panic. So thanks, guys. Okay, typically this is a presentation that I give in universities and colleges in person, and it's interactive. So what I'm going to try to do for this format is cover some of the basics, and then at the end have time for questions, because I'm assuming the fact that you came here, that you signed up for a networking session means that you're something that you're thinking about, and so we want to have a chance to address some of those questions. So in this session, we are going to do our best to cover what is networking, why do we network, networking best practices, and those are really some tips of the trade that have come from me networking a lot as I run this program, as I've run it for the last few years. And then we're going to tell a little bit about how you can join a free networking program called the Connector Program. So, you know, if you're listening to this and you're like, I want to get started, we're going to offer an opportunity at the end for you to learn how to get started with us. So, what is networking? If you're like me, so when I came home from school, it was a lot of like, oh, you got to get your face out there. They just got to get to know you. I was like, how do I do that? Or people would say like, oh, it's all about who you know. How do I get to know people? Or people would just say, you've got to network. So it comes back to what is networking? So I've been running this program for 2 years, and here's the simplest way I can think about it. Networking is getting to know people and helping people get to know you for professional or community purposes. That's it. It's that simple. And when we remember that networking is just getting to know people and helping people get to know us in a professional context, it doesn't have to be intimidating. And it certainly doesn't have to be fancy or pretentious. So once we start to think about networking in this way, the benefits of networking become a bit clearer. I figure most of you already have a sense of the benefits of networking because you've already signed into this webinar. So good work. You guys are already kind of edging yourselves into a really strong position by taking some training. But if you want to become more involved in your community, who you know helps. If you have a cause that you really care about or change you want to create, knowing people helps. And of course, if you're looking for work, who you know really can make a difference. So why network? Let's just take a look at the numbers really quickly. Statistically, 20% of jobs are advertised. So that means 80% of the jobs that are out there in Cape Breton are not advertised. If you're just looking on Indeed, if you're just looking online, you're not seeing most of the jobs that are advertised. And many of those jobs are actually coming in through networking. So sometimes it's, it's what we call the hidden job market. And it isn't all about networking. Sometimes it's as simple as you see that a company is expanding. Maybe there's an article in the paper that this company is expanding. They got a grant from the government. So maybe you drop off your resume because you know, hey, jobs are going to happen there. And so before the company even has to post a job, maybe they look through the resumes they already have, and boom, maybe you get a job. It might be something that I see all the time. I see it in our office. I see it across the island. Is you have a summer student, you have a volunteer, you have an intern, and you know that person's a great fit. And so when an opportunity comes up, you're not posting externally. You're making space for that person who you already know fits in. You already know their work ethic. You already know that they're a great fit for your company. And another way that these jobs get filled before they're posted, and this isn't one I see often, is someone who's doing the hiring says, hey, does anyone know a new grad? So networking, and more specifically, the Connector Program, are here to increase your chances of being the new grad that someone knows. We're also here to encourage you as you expand your network so you can so that networking can help you get the first job, but can also get you the better job, the dream job, the volunteer experience that fulfills you, or so that you can grow the network that will help you give back to your community and to other people. Because the more students I talk to, the more I hear that as a concern as much as getting a job. My experience tells me that strong networks make for strong careers. They strengthen your career possibilities, not just in the first job, but over years as well. But strong networks also make for strong communities. So if you, you really want to be on a board recruitment is often done through networking. Volunteers are often found through networking. It's how communities thrive. So it's a lot of why we should network, and I'm saying it to people who have already signed up. So the real question is, how do I start? So if you want to start networking, make sure that you can control the things that you can control. So when we think about networking, my favorite way to network is honestly going to events and meeting people. And even if that were happening, even if we weren't in COVID-19, that's still kind of a scary and unpredictable situation for a lot of people. But there are lots of things that are also going around that you can control. So for example, if you have social media accounts, you can control those. If you meet someone, they might look up your Facebook, they might look up your Twitter, they might look up your LinkedIn. So let's say you're on a webinar like this and you make a connection. Make sure that the social media accounts are representing you professionally. So if you have social media accounts, make them look vibrant, make it look like you're connected to your community, you know what's going on, and make sure that they look professional. So if you have something on your social media that wouldn't make a good first impression, you should probably take it down, especially when you're job hunting. I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, particularly because we are in this virtual world right now, right? Where we're not gathering much together in public, but we are doing things like this. LinkedIn is a place where you can actively create your professional persona. So if you're on Facebook, it's not supposed to look like, oh, this is lawyer Steve, and this is lawyer Steve's Facebook, and he does lawyer things. That's not what Facebook's for. Although it is something that employers look at to see how you're doing, get a sense of who you are. LinkedIn is a place for your professional persona. So at the end of this, I hope someone reminds me, I'm going to throw in some links for a good video that I found on LinkedIn and a good blog post that'll cover very specifically do's and don'ts of having a really good LinkedIn profile. Some things, simple things like have a good picture, for example. But I think the key to remember about LinkedIn is this. It's a place to follow up on connections that you've already made. So today, because of COVID, because we're not gathering much and having the normal networking events that we would normally have, I think that there is a temptation to use LinkedIn to try to set up some connections and make some meetings. And if you're doing that, and if you're having success at that, then congratulations. It's only to your benefit. However, traditionally, LinkedIn is a space to connect with someone that you've already connected with. So like to firm up a connection. So if I meet someone at a networking event, I'm in a meeting with someone professionally, maybe you meet at you bump into each other at a coffee shop and you have a conversation. You can follow that up with a request to connect on LinkedIn. The boundaries are professional. So it's not about, I met this really handsome guy at a coffee shop and I'm saying hello to ask him out, and I don't think any of you would be doing that. It's about building that professional connection. So what does that look like in COVID? It might mean that you've attempted a webinar with someone. It might mean that you attended a webinar or a tutorial or some kind of online event, and the presenter or speaker or artist was really impressive. And so maybe you send them a message and say, like, ask the link and just say, hey, I saw you present. I thought you were really wonderful. I was really impressed with what you said. It's anyone that you're encountering in a professional or semi-professional setting that you should be adding on LinkedIn. And then from there, you might message them for a meeting. I think we'll have time to talk a bit more about that later, but just in case, I'll say that anytime you're asking anyone for a meeting, which is the core of networking, right? You want to get face-to-face, you want to get one-on-one, be succinct, like keep it short and be direct. I used to be a fundraiser, so I used to have to ask people to donate money on a regular basis. And what I learned very quickly is that when we ask for something, we often have this impulse to follow it up with an apology. So I might say, hey, I really enjoyed learning about your company. I would love to learn a little bit more. Do you think we could meet for a virtual coffee just to continue this conversation? My impulse is to say, if you have time, if that's okay, if you don't mind. But what's more effective, and I can tell you this from being a high-performing fundraiser, is when you ask, make your ask and then be quiet. The silence will be uncomfortable, but it's really important to asking and getting a response. And I hopefully will have time to talk about this later, but I just want to say now that as well, that the more I talk to the best networkers in Cape Breton and employers in Cape Breton, the more they're saying, we want students to know what they want and just be direct about it. And so while it might feel, I don't know, maybe pushy or maybe like it's too much, especially depending on what culture you're from. I think now during COVID is a good time to start asking people for meetings. Just see how it feels, see how it goes. Make sure that your ask is short. Usually, okay, we're just getting into it. So start by saying, like, let's say it's an email. You should start by saying like, hi, or hi, David, whoever it is. And then you say something that reminds them of who you are. So, hey, it was so nice meeting you yesterday at the webinar. I thought the questions you asked the facilitator were really interesting. I'm trying to meet more professionals in Cape Breton, and I'd really like to talk more about the topic you brought up. Are you free for a virtual meeting? Warmest regards, Robin Lee. Like that short. So I think we can talk more about that later, but that's just a taste. I feel like I could say so much about networking and about communication, but at the heart of it, you have to be willing to be direct and, it's be vulnerable. So I just want to start there. Okay, so again, let's get back to the things that we can control around networking. We did the scary thing there, but let's get back to the things that we can control that are a little simpler. First impressions. So if you're calling someone, if you're emailing someone, if you're messaging them and asking them to connect, the message you want to give is of professionalism. So whoever you're corresponding with, they should feel like, oh my gosh, she could be working with us. Oh, it's just like talking to someone who works here. So for example, I've given you an example of what that looks like in email, always having the header, like the good morning, and it's like warmest regards, Ron Lee. But I think it's something that's really important in phone etiquette too. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's see if I can do it. I'm going to stop my video because when you're on the phone, you actually only have your voice to work with, right? And so you're communicating. It's so important that you communicate with your words, but also with your tone, because that's all you've got. You don't have face or body anymore. And so here's an example. Imagine you're calling me and I pick up the phone and I'm like, yeah, hello, hello. Or I might say, good afternoon, Robin Lee speaking. So those are all actual examples of ways that people have actually answered the phone when I've called them. And sometimes I'm calling these people because an employer has asked me to see if they're interested in working for them. And I'm getting, hello, hello. Okay, so when I answered, good afternoon, Robin Lee speaking, that's a professional answer. That's how I answer my work phone. So in that example, you can tell that I am engaged, that I'm friendly, and that I'm ready to talk to you. So it's just more comfortable for everyone involved. When I call someone and I'm like, ringing, and I hear, hello, I don't know if they want to talk to me. Like, I don't know if I just woke them up for a nap and they're not ready, but I feel less comfortable recommending them to a possible employer because the impression they're giving isn't positive, isn't open, isn't friendly, and isn't ready to talk. So that's something that's going to be really important for your entire time working in Cape Breton, in my opinion. And my opinion is professional, so listen to me. Okay. Okay. So same goes for body language. If you're on a Zoom meeting or you're meeting in person, make sure that your body language is also open, friendly, professional, that your clothes are professional. Sit up. Make sure, if it's possible, make sure that you're in a chair. Sometimes people end up taking their Zoom calls from their bed, and that's okay if that's the only thing possible, but it can feel a little too intimate. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is someone who could be working with me, because I don't usually see my coworkers in that kind of a setting. Let's see. Right. Okay. So I know we called it networking 101, right? It's the basics, but these are the basics that when you put them together, that's when you become a really good networker. I think it's useful to think of networking as a series of small things that you do well. So I've had Zoom calls with people who answer they pick up and they're like this. And I immediately think, what am I supposed to do with that? This person isn't ready to talk to me. This person isn't paying attention. That's not proper body language. In the same way, we know that crossed arms is nerve-wracking. On Zoom, there's a tendency to touch your face a lot. I think I might be doing it now during the presentation, not just right now, and that's also distracting. So again, just be aware of body language, because if you speak about yourself really well, like this, it's not going to impress people the way it should. To that end, eye contact's really important. This is how you communicate that you're listening to someone. So there are cultures around the world that don't prioritize eye contact, but I would say outside of the Mi'kmaq community in Cape Breton, which has a different relationship to eye contact, mostly in Cape Breton, we want eye contact. And in Cape Breton, we also want smiles. It's just we're smiley. So if you smile, I know that some of the people I work with have an idea that that's not professional, but in Cape Breton, it's very normal and professional to make sure that you're smiling at people. So these are just the basics for body contact. Okay. So we've covered some of the first impressions that we can control: online presence, tone of voice, clothing. Oh yeah, make sure you dress professionally, and body language. If you think you struggle with any of these are all topics that you can Google. So don't despair. If you're like, I don't know if I make enough eye contact, just Google it. You will figure it out. So let's get down to the real business. How do I network? How do I do? So let's be clear. Networking is harder in 2020 than it was in 2019. In 2019, we were doing networking events. You could come and be really scared and nervous, but still meet people and probably eat some really good food. But that's not happening very much during the COVID pandemic. However, I still want to talk about the basic communication skills that will help you in virtual meetings, in in-person meetings, and frankly, for all of your life. So since the goal of networking is getting to know people in a professional setting and helping them get to know you, I want to break down networking into two key pieces: developing a positive story about yourself and asking thoughtful questions of the other person and actively listening to their responses. So let's start with asking the questions. I think that's less scary for a lot of us. This is a real question for you. Are you a person who tends to talk too much? So in Canada, we typically expect conversations to move back and forth every 30 to 40 seconds. So if you tend to speak for more than 30 seconds at a time, you may be taking up taking more than your share of a conversation. So a great way to change this behavior is by asking more questions. And on the other hand, are you shy? Does talking about yourself make you nervous? If that's the case, asking questions is a great way to take the pressure off of you. And it also helps you discover what the other person is passionate about. So this serves a couple of purposes. Finding out someone's passion is such a great strength for networking. For starters, your purposes might overlap, and then you have something to move forward on. So like maybe you're talking with me and you're like, oh my gosh, tell me you're on the board for the Crossroads Clubhouse. Tell me more about that. And I start talking. You say, hey, the work you're doing with Crossroads is really interesting. And I can tell that you really care. And I also really care about mental health in Cape Breton and like to learn more. Do you want to grab coffee sometimes so I can hear a little bit more about mental health organizations in Cape Breton? So that's an example of an ask, right? Like getting down to actually face-to-face or Zoom to Zoom. I think it's normal to ask for that now, talking to someone. Excuse me. So what I just said there, like, hey, it was so cool talking to you. I could tell you were interested. I'd love to learn more. That's something you could say in person. It's something that you can send in an email or something that you can message. So another benefit of learning about a person's passion, because that's what we're really talking about here, is that you've learned something important about them. And that's what like connecting really happens. So let's see. Yeah, I've got time. Here's an example. There is a local business owner who's very connected to my organization, but he runs like, I don't know, like a kind of like a truck safety trade kind of business where I'm like, all I like to do is read, talk, and go to the theater. So there's not like a lot of natural connections there professionally. And so when I was meeting with him, I was trying to tell him about this program, but it wasn't very clear how we would connect. So I asked him a couple of questions, looked around his office. Oh, you've got a lot of books. Do you like to read? Learned a lot about him there, but didn't feel like we'd really connected. Then I looked at his desk and I said, oh, who's the little girl in that picture? And then I heard all about his daughter. I heard 4 stories about his daughter, and I could tell by his tone of voice and by his face that that was really kind of like what he's truly passionate about, is his family. And so I'm probably never going to get a job because I know about this guy's love of his daughter. I can't kind of sell her something. She doesn't help my program. But when I see him, I can ask, hey, how's your little girl doing? Is she still really into Esmeralda? And what that's going to tell him is that I listen when he speaks. I make a point of remembering what he says. I respect and value his words. And so that's really important in terms of building that connection. So the other thing here is that when you get someone talking about what they're passionate about, they feel really good, right? Like we love talking about our favorite things. And there's that old saying that says, people won't remember what you say, which is, by the way, is really hard to say in the middle of a webinar because all I'm doing is talking. And what I'm saying is you're not going to remember, but it's true. You don't really remember what people say. You do remember how they make you feel. And so when you ask people good questions, and when you get them talking about what they're passionate about, they feel really good. And that feeling, they kind of associate with you. Mm-hmm. So they'll be like, oh, what a wonderful young man I just met. He's so bright. He's so whatever. But really, we're just good at asking questions and getting that person talking. I'm just making sure it's not Jeremy telling me something here. Cool. Okay. Yes. Okay. So I have a quote here from one of Cape Breton's great entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, my good friend Wesley Goldford. Wesley says, "Nobody likes networking, but it's amazing how easy it gets the more you do it. Focus on getting to know other people and giving them an opportunity to tell their story." And just to be clear, this is the person who created a huge nonprofit that is hugely revolutionary in our area. And they did it in part because they're so good at talking to people and getting people on board with them. So the one thing I'll add to Wesley's advice, Wesley, by the way, is the artistic and executive director of the Highland Arts Theatre. So one thing I'll add to Wes's advice is that this tactic works best for people who are sincerely interested in the stories of others. So that's why Wes is a great networker. My mentor, Ian Mcneil, who gives workshops with the Connector Program, he's another exceptional networker, and he's also great at it because he loves listening. He's actually interested in what you have to say. He makes a point of letting you know that he's listening by nodding his head and smiling and kind of leaning into you when you're talking or leaning back to show he's listening. And he makes a point of responding to what you say. So he says things all the time like, "Oh, it was really interesting when you said that you're friends with Wesley Goldford," or I was interested when you said, and he just repeats it a little bit. And you're like, this guy's really listening to me. And so Wesley and Ian are both examples of people who kind of leave you feeling really listened to, really heard. And that's just a tremendous strength when it comes to connecting with people. So the other side of networking, I want to add one thing to that. When you know what people are passionate about, you know where opportunities might be. So, you came to this to find out about networking. How do I network? But you've also, just by listening to me, learned that I'm on the board for the Crossroads Clubhouse, which is a mental health organization, and that I'm friends with Wesley Goldford, artistic director of the Highland Arts Theatre. And so you might be like, I love mental health. She's on a board. I bet she's passionate. Maybe she knows about how to get this nonprofit started that I wanted to do, or what opportunities are there, or I've always wanted to volunteer for a theater. Maybe she could tell me how. Listening to what people are passionate about gives you clues into, how you might be able to connect with them in practical ways. Okay, so the other side of networking is telling your story, which is in Wesley's quote, right? Wes says, listen to people's story. So I want to be really careful about this. So networking is about you sharing about yourself, but I don't want you to tell your life story. Professionals in professional settings do not want to hear your life story. What I mean is that you need to develop a positive story about yourself as a professional. So this can look very different depending on the people and the stage of your career. And to those of you who are students or new graduates, I want to say that there's probably no harder time to have that narrative about yourself than right now. because if you might not have a lot of work experience to share. So one thing to think about that positive narrative is there's this kind of dreaded question people will ask you where they're like, it's not even a real question. They're like, tell me a little bit about yourself. It's an interview question. I ask it in the Connector program. People will do it to you in networking events, and you need to have an answer. Like if you go to a networking event, or even if you ask someone for a coffee to learn about to build your professional network, they're going to expect you to be able to talk about yourself and in a way that helps them to connect to you. So if someone asks you, tell me a little bit about yourself, I need you to have an answer. So if you're speaking to a new acquaintance, like, someone maybe you connect with after this webinar, one way you can do it is just having these key pieces. If you're a student, say your degree or diploma. If you have work experience or volunteer experience, give a very brief overview of that. If you're a professional who has 20 years experience, do not give me the details. You can say I have 20 years experience, blah, blah, and what you're looking for. So degree or diploma, brief overview, and what you're looking for. Here's an example. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I'm an MBA student at CBU. I'm in my final year of study. Before attending CBU, I worked in commerce for 7 years. I worked in 2 different banks, and now I'm hoping to find entry-level work in a local bank here in Cape Breton. So succinct, painless. It's really important. People approach this in various ways, but the key is to say, like, what do employers need to know about me? What do potential employers need to know about me? What does a friend of a potential employer need to know about me? So that's why the degree or diploma is important. A very brief overview of experience is a good idea, and what you're looking for is key. So what I'd like to do is for everyone to jot down a response to the question, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know it's a webinar. I know it feels weird, but I want you to take a minute to do it. Do it in your head, do it on your phone. Yeah. Okay, so we've got some questions coming in. Cool. I'm not gonna read them now. So maybe you do this after, maybe you don't have time to do this now, but if someone asks you, tell me a little bit about yourself, and you start to answer it, I think it's really important to ask yourself, how do I feel? So do you feel sad? Do you feel defensive? Do you feel scared? Do you feel like you don't have anything to offer? Pardon me. So any of those feelings like scare, defensiveness, fear, feeling like you don't have anything to offer, are going to actually block your ability to answer this question. So if you feel these things, ask yourself if they're impacting how you answer. So here's an example. I recently met with such a talented new grad. He had all this interesting education. He had a great personality. He was kind of cool, but he was feeling very defensive because he had been working in fast food, and so he had this education, and then he was not working in his field, and he was feeling like he needed to explain to me why that was happening. So his defensiveness meant that he spent a lot of time explaining to me why he was working in the service industry. But he was assuming that I was making a judgment that I hadn't made. I thought that his service industry jobs were actually really impressive and showed a wonderful work ethic. But because he was feeling defensive, we ended up spending a lot of time talking about something that I didn't care about. And so it was time that he could have been asking me questions that helped him understand the workforce better. It was time that I would have liked asking him about different parts of his education or different parts of his work experience. And it was fine. You know what? There's no such thing as perfect networking. I make networking mistakes. I should have said this at the beginning. I'm a professional networker. I teach networking. I do presentations to colleges, universities, and MBA classes. And I make mistakes networking all the time. It's messy. So if you feel uncomfortable, you feel like you're making mistakes, that's okay. And so this guy, when we were talking, he was feeling defensive. He spent a lot of time talking about something he didn't need to. It was fine. he still managed to make a really good impression. I still saw how wonderful he was. But for me, he's an example of why it's actually important to reflect on how you feel about yourself as a possible professional. So it's hard, especially if you're a student or a new graduate, it's hard to keep things positive and succinct, but you need to be positive, succinct, and know what you want. So other ways to work on this, make a list of some of your most interesting work or volunteer experiences. Like literally make the list and think about them, and think about how you can talk about them if they ever come up in conversation. And ask yourself, not just for networking, I really need interesting. There are lots of things that I do in my job. I do paperwork, right? I use databases. I write reports. That's not interesting, right? When I present to a group and it's a youth event, that's interesting. People like hearing about that. And then bonus, when I presented at that youth event, I fell over in front of everyone. That's like a good story that actually will make us connect. So yeah, sorry, I'm getting a little off here. All I'm saying is if people ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself, you need to have an answer. So I need you to think about what your skills are, what you're looking for, that's really important, and what you think you have to offer the workforce. So to get to that, I have another quote. I don't think we have a slide for it, but this is from Mike Mcneil. So Mike is one of our most dedicated connectors. He meets with so many new graduates. He has worked in politics, and he is currently the executive director for the Celtic Colours International Music Festival, which is like such a cool job. And he's a great guy. He's great at networking. And here's what he says. Success in networking isn't complicated. If you believe in yourself and what you have to offer those you are networking with. Let me read that again. Success in networking isn't complicated if you believe in yourself and what you have to offer those you are networking with. Do your research. It's a great point. If you're meeting with someone, research them. Understand those you are networking with and what, as best you can. Even simple research can indicate what value they may be looking for. So again, he's saying, think about what they need and what they want, and be prepared to demonstrate how you can provide it. You may be surprised how warmly received good networking can be. You can easily set yourself apart through successful networking, partly because not everyone's good at it. Remember to be authentic though. People can see right through you if it is all an act, and that's all true. I just want to emphasize that what Mike says is networking isn't complicated if you believe in yourself and what you have to offer to those you're networking with. So for new grads, I think it's really a time of self-reflection, not just what do I want, but what am I offering? So kind of a final point I want to talk briefly about before we get down to your questions, because I noticed that you're kind of rolling in. How do I make an ask? How do I ask for what I want? I said at the beginning of this that the leaders I speak to say they want new grads to be direct about what they want. What does that look like? So let's just recap that. Let's say you want to you want to ask for a meeting. If you're asking in person or if you're asking online, just make sure it's to the point. Here's a goofy story, but I think it works. Years ago now, I think I was at like church or something, and there was this really handsome guy who came up to me, and he was trying to ask me something, and it was taking him so long that I was like, this guy's gonna ask me out. This really cute guy's gonna ask me out. And then he didn't. He was asking me something completely, completely else and unconnected. But because it was taking so long, I literally had no idea what was going on. And it was very frustrating. So if you're making an ask, be to the point. So we went over how you do that in an email or in person. I'll just do it one more time. Send your little email, say hello, remind them how you know them. Hey, it was really great talking to you at this thing, or we met a few weeks ago and it was really cool. Remind them of what the connection is. Like, I really enjoyed a conversation about this, or I was really interested in this topic. And then what you want. I would love to meet with you over Zoom to hear a bit more about it. Are you available? I'm free Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's it. So I just want to touch briefly on this. I've seen a real tendency with students to get into to explain like their resumes, their hopes, their dreams, sometimes their immigration process via email, and it's not the place. So the point of the reason we're trying to get face-to-face with someone is that we can have a conversation. And the conversation can have a give and take. And so if you're trying to meet with someone, be very succinct, be very clear. And then when you meet with them, if they have questions about your resume, if they have questions about your experience, then they can ask, and you're giving them what they actually want to know and not what you are kind of thinking or worrying that they need to know. Again, my mentor Ian says, the conversation is kind of like it's like a boat that we're both rowing. So even if it's too long of an email, it's kind of hogging. And definitely once you're person to person, the more you're able to drop what you're worried that they need to know and just listen to what they're saying, ask them questions, the more that you keep that give and take to 30 or 40 seconds each, the more comfortable it's going to be for everyone. And I think the better it will progress and the more you'll be able to connect. So I'm thinking we have a lot of questions coming in. So I'm going to wrap up so we can answer those, because in my experience, that's actually where the really interesting stuff comes. Plus, I'm really tired of talking. So let's sum up. Networking is a way into the hidden job market. So that was 80% of jobs that never get advertised. It's a life skill that will improve your career over the years and over the decades, and will also improve your community. It requires you to ask questions, to actively listen to answers, and to be able to provide a positive self-narrative of yourself, where you can promote your skills and you can connect and tell your story. The best networkers build authentic connections because they know what they have to offer and they ask for what they want. So that's it. I'm going to tell you now about the Connector Program. Why am I here? At the beginning, Haley very kindly introduced me and said she runs a Connector Program. What is that? Okay, Connector is a talent retention program. We work with students approaching graduation within the next 6 months, students who have graduated in the last few years, newcomers to Canada who have post-secondary education, or relocated Canadians. So lots of people fit into our program. They have post-secondary, if I didn't say that. And they match community and business leaders with local and international graduates, newcomers, other people in their industry. What does that mean? So you can't see her, but the lady who made my presentation is named Leslie. Leslie went to CBU. When she was approaching graduation, she emailed me or I emailed her. We met. I learned about her skills. We did a little bit of coaching, and then I introduced her to someone in her industry who I thought she could really connect with. And then that person, here's what gets great. I make one introduction, only one, but that person volunteers to make 3 more. And then your training has you, like the training you get with me, has you meeting those people and asking them for more introductions. So on this teeny tiny little island of Cape Breton, you could meet a lot of the key players in your industry through this program. And that means when they're saying, hey, anyone know a new graduate? Anyone know a new graduate? We've got a job. Someone might say, oh yeah, I met this kid through this program. It also means that you're getting to ask industry leaders and professionals, about the industry. Who tends to hire new graduates? What would you do if you were in my position? How do people tend to view skills or degrees like mine? So it's a way to discover opportunities. It's a way to learn from really brilliant people. And it's a way to just start making those connections in Cape Breton so that you're able to know where to apply for jobs, maybe know about the jobs before they're coming. So that's it. We're going to put up a slide that has my contact information so that if you want to join oh, sorry, Jeremy. Yeah. So Match, Connect, Refer is how it goes. I think we can just flip right to the slide that has my information. And then if you want to join the program, if you think you're a fit, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, Jeremy. He's doing the slides for me. Then you can join. That's it. So thank you for listening to one person talk a whole bunch. Normally I give out we do games and we have like prizes because it's hard to listen that much. So here. All right, cool. Thanks.
I wouldn't dare assume to speak for everyone, but I don't think anyone minds listening to Robin Lee speak for half an hour.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Always a gentleman.
Robin Lee, would you like me to pick out some questions here and read them to you while others maybe think of some more questions they might have?
Yes, please. Could you fill
Wonderful.
my water? Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Cool. She's truly the best.
So one question that we have here is, could you share some advice on how to remedy or overcome shyness? I assume when networking, but maybe in general is the same answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So I think that asking questions, like I said before, is a great way to overcome shyness because then the other person has to talk. I also thank you. So I work with a lot of people. We, Jeremy, you and I, work with a lot of people who are shy and who don't like networking. And so I often test things out on them. And one thing that we've kind of said is if you're at a networking event, for example, when you're trying to meet someone and you introduce yourself to someone, here's what that person's probably thinking. Either, oh my gosh, I'm shy and now someone's talking to me. Oh, pressure's off if they're a shy person. Or if they're like me or you, Jeremy, and we want to talk to people. It's like, yes, now we get to talk to people. We love this. So especially if you're going to a professional networking event, that's what people are there for. So it's very appropriate for you to start the conversation. So just know, I'm so sorry. I don't know what it's like to be shy. I imagine though that in your head you're going like, why would this person want to talk to me? And the answer is if they're there to meet people, and they're probably thinking one of the two things that I just said. The other thing is I've been reading up a bit on. So this is being an introvert is different than being shy. But if you're an introvert, you very likely have skills that people like me who are too extroverted have a hard time developing. Introverts, and a lot of shy people as well, tend to be listening better, like retaining more information. And so they're building up their knowledge of the people they're with. And so that's really good to go back with, right? If you are a person who tends to listen, then you're going to learn where people are working, just by being around the conversations. And when you do get into a conversation with someone, you probably have the skills to actively listen, which someone like me has to work really hard to learn. I don't think there's anything else for shy people. I know that there are some cultures, like cultures are kind of on a spectrum in terms of like outgoing kind of things. So for example, when I work with Chinese students, everyone's unique, and different communities and regions have different traits, but often Chinese students tend to view something as like kind of pushier than a Canadian would. Like I'll say, just make sure you follow up with me. And they're like, oh, but should I? Like, is that polite? So if that question, if anyone listening is from China, you're probably, if you feel like you're being impolite, you probably are not at all. Yeah, so those are some of my pointers for shy people. If there are more questions on that, I'm happy to keep talking about it. And thank you for asking that question. That's a great one. Oh, one final thing. I'm so sorry. All networking doesn't look like me. So one of my favorite networkers is our colleague, Jenna Leahy. Jenna Leahy hates networking events, hates them. You go to a networking event, she's in the corner talking to one person. However, that one person and she are having the best conversation. Networking is not about seeing how many people you can meet, but making sure that the connections you're making are really valuable. In spite of not liking networking and being a fairly quiet person, she knows everyone. And when I need to meet people, she's one of the people I go to, like, Jenna, who do I know in this industry? So shy people can be really good at it. Introverted people can be really good at it. And they're just not going to look like me when they walk into a room. And that's okay. I would hate if everyone looked like me in a room, because then they'd all be getting the attention and I would be sad.
Well said, and I'm sure we won't embarrass Jenna at all. Our next question is from Vicky. Vicky says that she's a potential graduate and just has a study permit right now and is wondering if that enables her to join the Connector program.
Yeah, so if you're an international student in your final year of study and you plan on applying for your work permit as soon as you're eligible to do so, yeah, you can join the Connector program. You're anticipated, so like what month is it? September. If you're graduating in the spring, November is the month for you to get started. But why not email me now, and then just to get, while you're feeling brave, and maybe we make an appointment for November, but let's get going now. Yeah.
Perfect. We have another question here asking if we can share our contacts with everyone here. We absolutely can. We're actually going to send an email to everyone that registered with some information and links, the presentation, the recording from today's session, so that you can have all that. So stay tuned for that email probably in the next few days, and we'll be happy to connect with many of you.
And I'll pop in those LinkedIn links too.
Yes. We have another question here, and this one's a little bit longer, so bear with me. Hello, Robin Lee. I am Chandra. I hope I pronounced that right. I apologize if it's actually Chandra. Currently business analytics students at CBU. My question is that once I get acquainted with an employer via networking, how do we do any follow-ups for potential upcoming job opportunities with that particular employer, or how do we approach them afterwards, or reconnect with them maybe afterwards?
Okay, let me think this through. So the first thing I don't want happening is badgering for jobs. Like I've gone to networking events and seen people sit down and meet 10 people, and every time they sit down, they say, how do I get a job? You know what that is? Boring. So I would say if you're the first, that when we talk about being direct and being clear on what you're looking for, that's why. So if you're meeting with someone, make a point of saying, I'm graduating soon, or I recently graduated and I'm looking to get started in, entry level, blah, 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 or be clear, because the person you're talking to will understand. That means them, right? So I think from the get-go, if you speak that way, that's cool. So in our program, we recommend touching base. So if it's depending on the relationship, we might say like, send a little hello every month, a little hello email. And that email might be like, hey, Sharon, it was so cool meeting you. I just wanted to touch in and see how you're doing. I'm currently applying for jobs in marketing and really hoping to get started. If you know of anything in your company or locally, I would really appreciate a heads up. I hope you're enjoying the crazy weather. Warmest regards, Robin Lee. Something like that. And if you do that every now and then, that works. Okay. And what was her name? Who asked this question?
I believe Chandra, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and my apologies if I'm not.
So that's a great question, Chandra. So I mentioned Ian Mcneil. Ian is doing a session with us in the fall called Make Your Connection. Jeremy, make sure that I tell everyone about Cultural Connector, eh? We have to get, thanks.
I slotted in a space right after this for you to do that.
Thank you. Jeremy's the best. Jeremy and Leslie. And Haley. So Ian was he's one of the best networkers. He was living in Halifax, and he decided time to come home to Cape Breton. And the point is really simple that he makes. People aren't going to help you if they don't know you're looking for a job. And so in his case, he called someone up who he knows he has a good relationship, and he tends to know a lot of people. And he was like, hey bud, like, I'm thinking about moving home pretty soon. I know that you often know of opportunities. If you know of anything, please let me know. And in that case, the person said, I have an opportunity, you would be perfect. And that was it. He was hired, and he's still working there. But most of us aren't that lucky. But the point that Chandra is getting to she's reminding me of, is that people don't know you're looking. They're not going to offer you anything. So thank you, Chandra. I hope that was helpful.
So Robin Lee, I'm going to give you an opportunity to mention a few upcoming online training series that we've got coming up. Before I do that, I am going to launch a poll for those who are attending today. If you could take a quick look answer any of these questions here. It should only take maybe 5 to 10 seconds. Really, all of these answers help us better these webinars as we go. And it's information that both the Cape Breton Partnership, the Student Union, and our other partners can use to make sure that these sessions go as well as possible, which really means that you get the most out of them.
Yeah.
Robin Lee, go ahead.
Cool. Okay. So we know that COVID-19 has made being a student hard, networking hard. So we've come up with 3 programs that, in addition to the basic connector program that we are hoping will be helpful to you. One of them is pretty much full. It's one Ian's involved in. It's called Make Your Connection. It's a combination of communications training and actual virtual networking. It's full though, so good luck. We have 2 more though. Sorry, there are 2 more that are really great. One's called Cultural Connector. It is amazing. We've created 8 weeks where once a week you get introduced to a culture in Cape Breton. So there's some traditional cultures here. Obviously the Mcneil culture, the people who have been here since time immemorial, and they're facilitating 2 sessions for us. There are also the Acadians, the Acadian culture. Yes, Jeremy Martel, who will be facilitating 2 workshops with us. African Nova Scotian, that's me. So specifically in Whitney Pier, they'll be facilitating 2 sessions for us, and the Gaelic, of course, all the Maximics across the island. They're doing 2, so it's going to be 8 weeks. I'm killing this. Okay, it's 8 weeks of sessions, 4 groups. 1 week you'll have a session of storytelling and history where you're like, well, tell me more about Mcneil culture or stories. And then the next week is cooking. So you'll get to have someone from the culture and community teach you how to cook a traditional dish. The idea is that we want you to feel connected to this place. We want you to know how to connect with people across this island. And we want you to feel that warm Cape Breton welcome. And we're also going to make sure that there are opportunities built in to connect more to the cultures and to the regions. Yes, join that one. And the third one, this is not launched yet, so you won't be able to find anything about it online, but be so excited. It's Hire Me Cape Breton. So it's an online pitch competition where you get 30 seconds to say, hi, I'm Robin Lee. I'm Chandra. Here's why you should hire me. It's going to be launched online. We're going to have first a panel of professionals, like fancy people, go through, select the top candidates. We're going to promote them on social media and I think in the newspaper. And then those final candidates are going to be voted on by the public. So this has happened in St. John's before COVID. They did it online and they had over 2,000 people vote, which means that those top candidates will have so many people seeing their videos. We're also going to be putting on a pitch workshop so that you get a chance to learn how to promote yourself that way. So our idea is that even through COVID, these new grads or final year students or newcomers or relocated Canadians can have lots of professionals look at them and get a taste of who they are. So so that one you have to look out for. Like, you should probably follow us on Facebook if you want to find out, and we'll probably reach out to everyone who's part of this to let them know about it. And make it a cultural connector you can sign up for right now. It's going to be so fun.
So in that wrap-up email that I mentioned that we'll send, we'll also include information on how to join Cultural Connector if that is something that you would like to attend, and I highly recommend it. We don't have any other questions. We do have a few comments of people saying they had a good time and that this has been great. Thank you very much, Kimberly. We do have a comment from Vanita who wants to remind us that if you're a student, you can actually speak to your professors because some of them have introduced her to people outside. And that's a great point, Robin Lee. What do you think?
Vanita is a star networker. So is it Vanita Kumar? Yeah.
It is.
So yeah. Listen to Vanita, she's great. Yeah, and build those connections with your professors because they'll probably end up on your resume for a little bit, and because they're probably really cool people.
That too. So I think that about brings us to the end here. Thank you very much, everyone. Haley, I'd love to hear some closing remarks from you on behalf of Cape Breton University Student Union.
Thank you guys so much for hosting this webinar. Everybody that has joined us, thank you guys. Hopefully we'll get to do this again in the future.
Absolutely. The
Absolutely.
Student Union does great work and Alumni does great work. I just want to do a final plug for Connector. We work with more CBU students than with any other student, with anyone else. And so we really have a strong sense of what that degree, the degree and the education you're getting there, what it's worth and where it can go in the workplace. And we very sincerely want you to stay in Cape Breton. We need you. We think your skills are worthwhile.
It's great. Everyone stay dry today. And Robin Lee, you had one last comment there I saw.
Oh, me? It was thank you. Thank you to the Student Union and to Alumni and to the Cape Breton Partnership.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you, everyone. Everyone have a great day. Before we leave, Robin Lee, will alumni be permitted to participate in the job competition?
Yeah.
There you go, Kimberly. There's your answer.
Yeah, the criteria will be posted eventually. We're definitely targeting you guys, but we're not limiting it. No way, Jose.
Stay tuned for more info. Thanks a lot, everyone.